Hello, welcome to another episode of Panel with Professionals. Let me introduce our panels. We have Marquis, Monica, Kian, and Eric. And I am Stephanie, and I will be your host for today. Okay, so let's get started. So today we are going to talk about potty training and some tips. So some of us on this panel with professionals and parents are parents, and some of us are just professionals. And some of us are professionals and parents. So I want to get started and I want to ask you guys, like, who on this panel has had either experiences potty training or whether it's, with a family member or just professionally, who has helped with potty training?
I have.
I think we all
Okay.
have, yeah.
All right, we all have. Okay. So why don't we get into and talk about, before we talk about the nitty-gritty of potty training, let's talk about why potty training is important. So as a parent, why is potty training important as a parent? Like, what are one of the reasons that we might start potty training our child at any age? But Monica, let me ask you, like, you have how many kids?
3.
You have 3 kids, and they're all potty trained?
They are. Well, yes, pretty much. We still have
Okay.
a night, training issue, but yeah, 3. And partly why we started, I did not want to have 2 kids in diapers. That was my initial thing. But then once we got to the 3rd kid, that kind of went out the window. But how expensive these diapers are, it's pretty crazy. So
Ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah. I actually shopped for diapers for a baby shower a couple weeks ago, and I haven't bought diapers in 8-9 years, and they're way more expensive now than what they were, I think, when Harrison was younger. So
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I mean, I know we have 3 children as well, and I was telling my wife at the time, like, we need to get the first 2, like Monica was saying, making sure they're completely out of diapers because we're hitting the 3rd for many reasons. It's like juggling and trying to keep everybody clean, but it's the expenses were just insane. And if you can get through getting your kids to sleep through the night, getting them potty trained and learning how to swim, it's like huge. And
huge
I remember
milestone.
when we completed Miracle 2, I mean, we had a little party at our house for sure.
Yeah.
and Keon, what about you? What were some of the
So,
reasons that is Noah's potty trained? Yes.
yes, he is. It was a long, daunting process, and we are still working on bowel movements overnight, but we have the urine pretty down. But the reason why I had to do it is because, like, for some reason, Noah found the most inopportune time to have to use the restroom. And like right in the middle of the Dallas Cowboy game, and we are about to score a touchdown to win, and then here he comes with a big poop, and it's like his needs to be changed immediately because otherwise the whole house will be stinking. So I can't let him just walk around in it. So I was like, I really got to get this kid potty trained so he will not interrupt my football games anymore.
Number 1 reason.
That's it. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, cost for me, and I think just how many diapers you go through, and like, I don't know how many people use like disposable diapers and cloth diapers. I was not interested in cloth diapers, but I feel like that's just waste. Like, it's so much waste of how many times you're changing a diaper, how much time it takes you to change a diaper, and the cost and the impact that diapers have, I think, on the environment was one of the reasons why I wanted to potty train as soon as I could. I think that people have different reasons and experiences. What about you, Marquis or Doris? What are some of the reasons that maybe some of the parents that you've worked with have wanted to potty train their children?
Um, I would say for me, there have been cases where I have been the one pushing for potty training. And just from the professional side, like, I'm all about promoting independence as much as possible and making the family's lives as easy as possible. So for me, that's the perspective that I came from, is that I'm here to help alleviate whatever I can for you. And so that's pretty much the stance that I took. And that was like pretty much for me, like the reason as to why I started potty training some of the clients that I work with.
There's a lot of pressure from daycare centers and preschools. And I'm finding that most parents are feeling a lot of pressure to get potty trained, or their kids are not going to be able to go to certain preschools or daycare centers. And that can be a lot of pressure as a parent.
Yeah, there's additional fees too with a lot of the
Yeah.
preschools these days too. If your child's not potty trained, they'll charge you an additional fee for diaper changes, which again, on top of having to pay for diapers, now you're paying somebody to change the diapers. But Stephanie, you're probably going to come to this at some point, but like at the age, like what age do you think, if you can remember, Kita, what age were your kids potty trained? Think of the first one, Lucy, the oldest.
Lucy was 18 months.
Yeah.
Kingston was 3 years. And Marley was 2.
Yeah. Why do you think it took so much time with Kingston versus Lucy?
We just didn't try. And then when we did, because Lucy was so young, I was like really adamant that Lucy and Kingston are only 19 months apart. I was really adamant not to have 2 babies. And it's like your first child and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
So we potty trained her. It took her about a month to be fully potty trained. And long, but not that long. Kingston, we just waited, and I had Marley already, and it didn't matter. I was like, I'm just exhausted. He potty trained when we did wait that long. He potty trained in 1 day. So
oh wow,
he was ready for it, and we just pulled the diapers, and he just was able to figure it out. Now he still is, we're still working on some nighttime issues with him, and he's at the age we're working with some doctors and stuff like that with some of that. But and Marley, she potty trained relatively quickly, and we weren't so strategic about it with the third. And she's also seeing her siblings and all of that stuff. So she kind of just was ready, and she just started wearing underwear, and that's just what she did. So
I kind of had the opposite in terms of, and you're familiar with this because I know Monica was helping us at some point with potty training our third, but we had an easier time with the first 2 than we did with the third. So the boys were a lot easier to deal with. My daughter just didn't want to potty train. I mean, at some point we're like, hey, like if you go pee pee on the potty, you won't be a baby anymore. And she just looked at us. She goes, I'm the baby. And I'm like, all right.
That motivation was
that backfired.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to tapping into those reinforcers is really important.
For sure. And we'll probably jump into that in a little bit. But
that was one of my questions. That was going to be my next question, actually, is like, what would be like the right age, right? So we talk about potty readiness, and I think age is a factor in the readiness of, whether it's us as a parent, like my kid's 3 and they have to be potty trained, or so that would be age related, or social pressures. I want to send my kid to preschool, and the preschool won't take my kiddo, or I have to pay X amount of dollars now because they're not potty trained. But so besides age, like what would be some other, in your guys' experiences, like or to potty train a child other than age?
Well, go ahead, Eric.
No, please. Yeah.
No, so outside of age, because it seems like you guys all have started your kids at different ages, between the ages of a few months, 16, 17 months, all the way up to 3.5 years old. So that's a wide age range for that young of a child. I usually heard that you go based off when the child is able to tell you, like, hey, I peed in my pants, or like I pooped in my pants, like mommy, daddy, I have pee in my pants, or I'm wet. Then that's probably the time that you would want to start. But my question is like, not when do you start? At what age is it a problem if they have not started yet? Like, you know what I mean?
Let's get back. That's a really good question, Keon. Like, when does it start becoming problematic? And I think we should circle back and get to that. But I think, I don't want to say age is irrelevant. I think, from my experiences, it has to do more of whether or not the individuals, the children that you're working on with potty training have like basic foundation skills. So, can they follow simple instructions? How long can they sit at a table because they're going to be sitting at the toilet? Can they play tabletop games, or can they manipulate? Do they have the fine motor manipulations to play with, small toys or even larger toys? And I'm saying all of this is because the idea is that you're going to have your little one sitting on a toilet for, it can be anywhere from 30 seconds to, longer periods of time. So you want them to feel comfortable enough where they can sit on the toilet, so you have those successes. But yeah, basic compliance, I would think, is one. Following simple instructions, playing with items on a tabletop. So putting, some sort of a little table in the, and we'll talk more about that as well when you're sitting in the toilet. But, can you guys think of any other foundation skills? And again, I think like age is irrelevant. It's not completely irrelevant, but, we can train, and we have trained, with some of you children much younger than 2 years of age. And we've also trained individuals who have had special needs that are teenagers, and we've potty trained them. But we didn't start off with potty training because they did not have the foundation skills necessary for moving into potty training. So again, wide range. But I do want to get back to Keon's question. When does it become problematic? But what do you guys think are some of the foundation skills? We said so far, following simple instructions, compliance, playing with toys, which I think happens at a very young age at a tabletop.
Some way to communicate what they need, or ability to just walk to the bathroom themselves if they can't communicate that, because just having that access and being able to go is important. So some way to communicate or access the bathroom on their own, I think is important.
Okay, so some sort of like communication skills to kind of signal they have to use the restroom. With some of the children that I've worked with in the past too, it makes it a lot easier if they can communicate when they have to use the restroom. What I've also found, and I know you guys have done this with, some of the families you've worked with, is time schedules. So trying to time it right. So, they have juice at this time, how long does it take? Or, they had, something to eat or drink. How long does it take after before, they need to use the restroom? Meaning, when do they have an accident? We start charting that and collecting that information. For those of the children that can't communicate it. What's interesting too, a lot of times, is when they do communicate, it's like what Keon was sharing with us, is they tell you after the fact, and you're like, oh, you could have came to me before that, it wouldn't be as messy. But yeah, communication is very helpful. I don't know if it's always necessary, but I think in potty training the children we work with and our own children, I think it's very helpful.
I have a friend who's taking care of a girl who's, I think she's 18 months old, and she's still in diapers. But we figured out that every time she's getting ready to use the restroom, she goes and grabs a diaper and she hands it over. And I was like, oh, this is great. You need to like say something like potty each time that she does that. I said, that's her way of communicating that she's about to go, or she did.
Is she, that's great. So is she actually pulling the diaper because she's already had an accident? And is she in diapers right now?
She's currently in diapers. So we think that it's either she's getting ready to go, or she's just gone when she's grabbing the diaper and like handing it over too.
Yeah, that would be interesting if she's just about to go. Like, it's great. Like, she's telling you, that's how she's communicating. I need to use the restroom. Or she's already gone, like you said, and she's like cleaning up. So the first obviously would be preferred, if we can. And then I like what you said, that's a great suggestion, is pairing words with the diaper. Like, I need to use the restroom, or, potty, or whatever it might be. The easiest way of communicating, even if you can't get them to give you some sort of verbal communication. I mean, the fact that, they have the diaper right there, that's amazing that they're communicating with them. What about you, Stephanie? With your son, Harrison, like, what were your challenges? What were some of the things that you experienced when you were potty training? And like, how old was he when you were potty training? He was 2.
He was just a little over 2. I mean, I think like he was easy, like, and I've had experiences potty training with, kids that I've worked with, and I felt a lot of pressure potty training him because he was my own kid.
So many parents out there right now going like, I hate you for making that statement. That it was so.
And I like easy, like just in the sense of like, it didn't take very long to potty train him, for him to learn to use, at least for urinating in the potty. Overnight is a whole other issue, and bowel movements as well. But I think him sitting, and we'll go into like the some of the things that are difficult, but like him sitting on the toilet, right? I mean, he can sit and play for hours, but when it came time to sit, and he has to sit for a certain amount of time on the potty until it's time for him to get up. Like that was, we didn't get a lot of tantrums, but I could tell it was really hard for him to understand that, you know, like you just have to sit until you hear my timer go off, and then it's, or you go pee and then you can, you know. But I think that one of the things that we talk about is like our kids being ready, right? So age, or are they letting us know if they're wet or not? Can they walk to the potty? But what about like as parents or caregivers? Like I feel like there's some lend to what are our readiness or caregivers' readiness to potty train, other than us coming in and saying, hey, your kid's 5 and he needs to be potty trained. Like, so as a parent or as a caregiver, what are some skills that we might need or we can give advice to on to let parents know when they're ready for, because it's a
Yeah.
big thing for us as caregivers to be ready to potty train our child.
That's very true. I believe that Noah was a little bit delayed in his potty training because I literally had to take a week or two off of work to do that. Like, it's an all day thing. And if you want it to be effective, because I tried to just like potty train him the natural way and just hopefully it comes on and capture the opportunities that he did use the potty in the toilet and reinforce. It just wasn't working. So I literally had to take time off to help increase that potty training and get it really going. So it's important that you have time available. I think that's, for parents about being ready is having the time to do it, because they don't hold their potty while you're at work and just gonna wait for you to come home to start working on this. Like, no, you're gonna have to have the time available to capture those opportunities of when they're wet and all that stuff. And it was really, really challenging I'm still having slight challenges, and my guy is 4, which is why I was begging the question as when does that old age become a problem? But yeah.
Well, I think you're answering your own question, Keon. I mean, and I definitely, like I said, I think we're kind of leading into that now, but there's so many variables in my opinion, and and again, it's my opinion, but also others are going to have different opinions. I don't think there's one, direct answer to say, hey, this is the age that, you should have your child potty trained, but then, it leads to what are the challenges if they're not potty trained by this age. And I think part of it, you and your son's mother were both working parents or are both working parents. So that even, throws a wrench in the whole schedule of trying, to sit down and say, hey, we have to start working on this right away if we want to, make sure he's potty trained before he goes to preschool. In my opinion, it also depends on the number of kids you have. Like with Monica, with her first child, and then Stephanie saying how easy it was with her son. It was easier with our first son as well. You don't have other kids running around. You don't have more than one child in a diaper. So with the first child, looking back, I mean, it wasn't easy then, but looking back, it was a lot easier with one child. It was a lot easier with the first one. But, I think, and not saying, hey, it's easier with one child versus 2 or 3. We can all argue that, but my goal was, hey, let's make sure that they're potty trained before they go into preschool, because I didn't want other people having to deal with changing, our kids' diapers. So our goal was, we had that goal. Let's make sure that they're ready to go by the time they go into preschool. And we didn't put them into preschool until about a year or 2 before kindergarten. So, and I think, there's no question that it would be in everybody's best interest to make sure that your son or daughter is potty trained before kindergarten. But I think the goal should be at least preschool if they're 3 and older. I think 3 is probably a good number.
Got it. And I asked that age question because I believe Monica was stating that she seeks like the doctor's help for her little one right now, right?
Yeah, but that's because he's 7 and having some nighttime issues. And so they usually say at a certain age, there's a really wide window, like like you guys are saying, like there's a really wide window of what's considered normal or appropriate for their development. And so now that 7 number is a magic age for the overnight stuff. They say, the doctors, that's what I've heard. So that's kind of why we're exploring that avenue. But
when you say doctors, you're talking about the MDs you're working with?
MDs. Yeah. I mean, to rule out lots of different like physiological things, which, I know that in our work and with some of the kids that we worked on, that's always one of the first things we say, like when they're older, is like, make sure, rule out any medical issues that might be there, because there's a lot going on in all of the bodies. So
Yeah, and it kind of leading into what, Keon was saying, when does it become problematic? So, we all have experience with typically developing children, and also we have a lot of experience with individuals that have, special challenges, who have intellectual disabilities, special needs. And so, we have, as a group here, have all had experience working with individuals that are preteens and teenagers that unfortunately were not potty trained before they came to us. And, we've worked with families, and I think, some of the things that I've heard from families, once they get into this routine where they're dealing with their preteens and teenagers, you hear how it's just a game changer once their preteens and teenagers are potty trained. And I'm sure you can imagine, the work that they've had to put into their daily schedule with, changing a preteen or teenager's diaper. So I think, it's a game changer for them. I think it's a game changer for everyone. You save money on diapers, you're not having to deal with it. You can send them to preschool or kindergarten. So, Keon, like you were talking a little bit, now with Noah, he's 4 years old. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you have, and then maybe we can explore
Wow. So
some of the other
my
challenges.
challenges were really tough. I tried the strategy of having a schedule and trying to like give him food. I'll give him a beverage, and then I would time about how much time went past before he had an accident in his diaper. So I got that average time, which was about 30 to 40 minutes, which was a long time. So what I started to do was, after he had beverages, I would put him on the potty 30 minutes later. And my challenge was, I would set a timer, like Stephanie said, like at least sit for 15 minutes. And then if you haven't gone, then you can get up. Well, my kid would never go. As soon as he get up and I put his diaper on, 5 minutes later, he goes. And so he was like, "Are you holding it to not go?" Like, even before that, I had a challenge of even getting him on the toilet, just to sit down on the toilet. And so I had to like reinforce with a timer, showing him a clock of how long you need to sit. And at the end, when the timer goes off, you can get a piece of candy. That got him cool with just sitting on the toilet, but he would not void inside of the toilet until he got up. So
Until you
I
had the
tried to
feeling of the diaper back on, as you're saying. So the feeling of the diaper made him feel
made him
comfortable
feel
enough so that
comfortable. Exactly. He's like, I can go in here, because that's the segue into what I was about to say next. I have kind of like a really, really neat kid where he doesn't like to make a mess. If he spills something, even crumbs or cookies, it's like he needs to get it up. If he get his clothes wet or his pants or socks wet, he wants to take it off. So I started to put him in underwear. And he would have potty accidents, urine accidents in his underwear, but he didn't like it much, and he would come tell me immediately. Whereas with the diaper, he wouldn't even tell me that he went.
Yeah.
And so, but he would still have the urine accidents, but no poop accidents in his underwear at all. He would like, "I have to go poop." And I'm like, "Well, let's go to the toilet." But at that time, he was still fighting me to sit on the toilet because he didn't want to sit there. Then one time when I took off work for those 2 weeks, I decided to do a strategy. This kid does not like to make a mess, and we're going to be home all day. So for 2 weeks straight, he walked around in the house, no bottoms, no underwear, no diapers, no anything. So when he had the sensation or the urge to go, he didn't want to go on the floor, and have it all over his legs and feet and all over the floor, because he doesn't want to make a mess. That was successful in getting him to start run to the potty when he had this sensation. Because we also, like when we teach potty training, I feel like we get into the habit of reinforcing like the urine and the voiding inside of the toilet, which is what we want to do. But I wish there's a way that we can, and we can't really capture that sensation, but reinforce when they feel the sensation and urge to have to go, and capture that opportunity. Like, this feeling that you have right now, I'm glad you let me know that you feel like this. Here's your candy now. Now you can go void in the toilet. So not getting the candy for voiding in the toilet, but getting the candy or reinforcer for identifying that I have this feeling to need to go.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge for me, and I'm still having some challenges.
Yeah. So keep in mind, though, a lot of times when people think about providing, whether it's something that's highly preferred to the individual, we call that socially mediated reinforcement. But, a lot of the times the reason why we as adults, when we go use the restroom, and whether it's that release or that void, that is a type of negative reinforcement, which a negative meaning not bad, but it's an escape. It's a release, and so it feels good not to have that pressure on your bladder or within your intestines. But the thing that's interesting, what I found too, Keon, I had that issue with my second child, my son, and Monica, I think we've done this with some of the kids that we've worked on together, but I've definitely worked on this with other families. It's very common for people to say, they will wait till they get the diaper. Once the diaper's put back on and we pull them off the toilet, then they void, whether it's a urine or a bowel movement. So what we started doing years back with some of the other families we've worked with, with typically developing and children with also that have had special challenges is, putting the diaper on, but cutting a hole before putting the diaper on, cutting a hole in the front and in the rear. So it's open enough so that when they're sitting on the toilet, they still have that feeling of wearing a diaper, but they're able to void and it goes into the toilet. And we made a pretty big deal about that. And then eventually cutting the diaper so that there's only the band that is around the waist, which feels like it's more like a belt, and then eventually getting rid of that. But, Keon, you also mentioned something, and we'll talk about strategies probably in our next video about what we can do to increase the probability of having our children void in the toilet. And of course, it's like, typically when you go into a bathroom, there's nothing great about going into a bathroom. But what we want to do is pair it with like a lot of highly preferred items before we even start potty training, so that they want to go in there.
Yep.
But anyways, Doris, you wanted to say something, jump in, please.
Yeah, I have a question, Keon. So I know, like you had said, that it seemed as if like just sitting on like the toilet was uncomfortable or aversive. And I know that they make those little seats for kids. Did you ever try that?
No, and let me correct myself. That was when I graduated him from the kids potty to the big potty. Kids potty, he was fine sitting on that, but now it was time to graduate to the big potty, and he just felt like he would fall in. So you're talking about those little small kid toilet seats that you can put over.
Yeah.
I did not use that because I was just successful at using the timer to reinforce his tolerance of sitting on the toilet,
A lot of the new toilet seats, the potty training seats, you can take the top off and actually put it onto the regular toilet. So there's a smooth transition. I highly recommend, if you're working on potty training your children, it makes it a nice transition. So you have the little potty in the bathroom or in the, next to the toilet. They're using their, special potty. But like I said, you can purchase some of these little toilets for the children where you can take the top off and put it on the regular toilet so that they're not falling in, but they have the same feel. It's just a little bit of a bigger adventure.
They also make these really cool potty seats now. It's just a regular like adult one, but then there's like an extra flip down that's like a small kids one, so it doesn't look so like you don't have to pull it off or whatever. It just flips up like a regular toilet seat. It's like the small one, the big one. So
I think what we're gonna do is, Monica, if you can, find the link to that, and then we'll look for some other links. Yeah. We'll add them so that for those of you out there that are working on or thinking about working on potty training, you can click these links and purchase these items to make this whole adventure a little easier.
Also, what I would like to throw out there for families is like, as much as we reinforce, try also not to punish or reprimand your child so much when they do have accidents during this situation. And it's just coming from personal experience. My professional me has potty trained 10 plus kids in 3 weeks flat or less, but my parent me I'm still working on potty training my son, and it's been almost like a year or so. But one thing Noah does, and he's finally kind of gotten over it, is I noticed that when he would have a bowel movement, he would go and hide under a table or in a closet or in a corner. And I was like, why is he hiding every time he had a bowel movement? And so I had to think about my behaviors. My behaviors was when he had a bowel movement, you're not supposed to poop in those pans. Why didn't you go to the bathroom? You're supposed to void in the potty. So now he's afraid to let me know that he's had a bowel movement. Like, you know what I mean? Because he doesn't want to get reprimanded for having one in his pants.
Thank you for sharing that, Gail. Appreciate it. Yeah, and it is challenging. I mean, when you have, it's easy to give advice. It's easy to hear advice. The challenge is always application. So when you're working with especially when you're working with your own children, you try to follow the rules, whether it's, from a professional or if you're a professional, and it's a little different, but, sticking to the steps that we're going to go over a little later will increase the probability of potty training success with your kids.
So we have a couple other things, and one is like what to expect before we get into like the specific steps of potty training. So sounds like we've all had various experiences of what we've experienced personally as parents or caregivers, but also professionally and potty training some of the kids that we've worked with. But like, Keon, like I appreciate your honesty of, I've been doing this for a year and my kid's still not potty trained, but professionally I got this down.
Yeah.
Like, I guess my question would be like, what would a parent expect that not, they're not a professional, they don't do this for a living, they're just, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whatever, and they're wanting to, hey, you know what, my kid's ready, he's showing all these signs. What are they, once we go into the steps of what we recommend for potty training, what would they expect? How long would this intense, we're saying you have to have time available, however much time, Keon, you said you took a couple weeks off. But if you were to take like a week off, because, it is pretty time consuming, what would a parent expect? How long before their kid is successfully using the potty, whether asking to go or on a time schedule for some kids?
I mean, that's going to vary, right? I think it goes back to whether or not your son or daughter has those foundation skills that we talked about. And I think there's a lot of prep work too, before you actually jump into it.
Yep.
Part of it is we said, hey, is your son or daughter, do they follow simple instructions? Are they compliant for the most part? And there is no child at such a young age that is 100% compliant. But, you have, do they follow your instructions? Are they willing? How long can they sit for? Have you paired the bathroom with a lot of fun activities so that when they have to actually sit down on the toilet, they're going to be more willing to do so? And I think, the common mistake as people make is that, their children can't sit for long periods of time. They're not able to follow simple instructions. They don't have, the nonverbal or verbal communication skills necessary to start all of this. And then they possibly, take their children into this small little room that doesn't smell that great sometimes, with like zero preferred, items for them to play with, and it becomes a bad experience, and you pair it as a bad experience. And I think that's the failure. But the time that it takes is it's gonna vary with all those prerequisites and each individual. Monica was saying, her third child, it was a lot easier for Marley to potty train, whereas with my third child, it was a little more challenging. So yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into play. But I think the biggest thing is doing all the prerequisites, making sure that everything is checked off before you jump into this, before you decide to take time off work, and make sure that you and your hopefully there's another person that can assist, a significant other, or a caretaker that can assist when you're ready to do this.
I also I don't advise that people rush through the process, and the time will vary. But I think the more opportunities that people have, the quicker it can get done. And how do we increase our opportunities? Is giving them more beverages, using more beverages than you would normally give them throughout the day. Maybe providing more foods that's a little more fiber in the foods, so you can have those opportunities for bowel movements. I think the more opportunities that the child has to go to the restroom every day, the quicker they will pick up the skill also.
Yeah. So Keon, sorry, Monica, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, the preparation, I think, is one of the biggest things. If once you've decided that your child is pretty ready, I think that the difference sometimes on how long it's going to last may also be a big factor of like how much are you prepared to, and that preparation, a lot of things we talked about, but also like the support and the timing of it, I think is really important, and what you also have in your life going on, because it's going to be a little bit stressful. You have to focus on it and give a lot of attention to it. So if you have a million other things going on, a move, major other events, a new puppy, it's going to make it that much longer and that much more challenging. But
yeah, and of course, like, you know, I don't know if we really mentioned this, but, you know, you want to focus on getting your son or daughter to urinate in the toilet before you start focusing on bowel movements, and you want to focus on urinating in the toilet before really thinking about what's going on overnight. But again, you know, I think, you know, everything that we're talking about here, hopefully is helpful for the families that are out there that are considering starting potty training. So I think in our next video, Stephanie, we're going to talk a little bit about the steps, so the prerequisites, and we're going to talk a little bit about the actual steps that should take place, and how you determine how much time you should spend in the toilet or in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet and such. But we'll give those specific steps during our next panel discussion.
And I think we can also maybe talk about, just, you mentioned a couple times about how to make the bathroom a fun place. And so you're not taking, you know, the kiddo. So I think maybe the next time we can just talk about preparation and how do you prepare for the, you know, endless amount of hours that you're going to spend in the potty, what's the materials that you need, what that would look like. Because I think that a lot of times we just expect it to happen, and there's a lot of, you know, prep work that goes into it before the very first time that you step foot into the bathroom.
And Keon was talking a little bit about like those opportunities. You know, the more opportunities you have, you know, the more hopefully the probability of success will go up. But I think, you know, we're talking about, you know, capturing these opportunities. It's also contriving opportunities. So setting it up, and Keon, you mentioned this, is like, you know, giving them a little more of their favorite liquids so that there's a higher probability that they're going to need to urinate. And giving them maybe some salty foods, which we'll talk about again on some of the prerequisite steps, so that they're more willing to drink a little more of the liquids, whether it's water or their favorite juices or whatnot, so that we have a higher probability of, you know, successful voids in the toilet. Yeah, I'm
going back to just like making the setting better. I know we'll talk about this in our next discussion, but like making it fun and cool for the kids. And we know what reinforcement, the more immediate the reinforcement after the response, the better it works. And they have these new potties where as soon as they have sensors in the potties, and as soon as the urine hits the sensor, it like flushes and makes the sound and stuff like that, you know. So they're pretty expensive, but they're really, really cool. As soon as the potty senses something, it like rewards the child, like, you know, with the song or something like that. Those are pretty cool.
Very nice.
I think it's really important for all parents to know that it is okay if you are ready for potty training, but your kid isn't necessarily ready yet. It is okay if they're not showing all of the signs. It's okay if they're not communicating it. And it's okay if they say no, because they're probably going to say no, because the bathroom can be a scary place. It's a big hole. Typically, you're supposed to be alone in there. So it is okay. There are lots of tips and strategies for all phases of potty training, whether your kid is ready or not.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I do too. Very good point, Marky. Yeah, very good.
Well, thanks so much for listening to panels with the panel with professionals today, and check us out on our socials. And if you have any questions on potty training part 1, like how to know you're ready, your kid's ready, you can visit our website or check us out on social media.
Yeah, our website at Parent Like a Professional. We do have you know, some instructional videos and instructional manuals, but again, like what Stephanie was saying and what our panel is talking about, is we're going to go ahead and in our next discussion, we'll talk about the prerequisites. We'll talk about all the steps necessary for success, and hopefully we'll get you closer to having your children out of diapers. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.